Electric cars are killing Britain's automotive industry. Duh, you don't say. The reason why Lotus has suffered its latest setback is because experts, EV perts, thought people who wanted to buy a Lotus would want an electric vehicle, and they don't. If you buy a Lotus, you want the sound of that car drumming in your ears. You want the thrill. You want the noise. You want the sound of the engine. You want the vibration from the engine. You want the gear change. You don't want zzz. 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 No, thank you. People have voted with their feet. No, Colin, you know, Colin and Keith, and if there's a few automotive casualties, so be it. Don't worry about it. We only have ourselves to blame for the catastrophe that has befallen a once proud British sector. Electric vehicles would be better for air quality within major cities. They would be cheaper to run, and they would relaunch an industry that used to be one of the largest employers in the country. Perhaps most of all, they would be a major component of creating a net zero economy. Now, what is a net zero economy? From what I can gather, there's no upside. It just costs you money. It just costs us all money to go towards a target, which, so what? Lots of bold promises were made for the transition from petrol to battery driven cars. There's just one catch, with the news that the luxury manufacturer Lotus is losing almost half its workforce. It is becoming painfully clear that it is also the final nail in the coffin of the once mighty British car industry. In all honesty, the British car industry and the workers haven't helped themselves. I remember some horrific stories of what they used to do, not just in the motor industry. My father was foreman at an engineering firm in Preston, and he was foreman during the day, and there's a foreman for the night shift. The foreman for the night shift wasn't as good as my dad, and it seemed like virtually every night my dad used to go out before I got up in the morning, and he'd get home probably 6:30, 7 o'clock. He'd just be having his tea. The phone would go, "Jeff, can you come back? We've got a problem on the night shift." Sometimes I'd go back with him and I'd sit in the car. And I went back one night with him, sat in the car, listening to the radio or whatever I was doing, just outside. And I saw a load of men on the roof. And when my dad got back, I told him. And it was the night shift. What they were doing, they were going up to a room at the top of the building, climbing out, walking along the roof, going down the fire escape, and then going to the pub down the road. We had the same thing with British Leyland. They actually made, for the night shift, they'd actually made a bedroom where they could sleep out of big cardboard boxes. Little entrance, go inside and they could sleep. I used to say when I was younger, the only thing that never went out was the brazier. The people that were on strike used to warm themselves by. I get a lot of criticism for going, you know me, I'm a big patriot and I love the UK. But the motor trade keep going out on strike. It was just, you know, they went out on strike, you couldn't get a car, and things like Datsuns were just coming in. You know, we used to sell cars to people from British Leyland. We were selling Opals to people who worked at British Leyland and who could get 35% off a British Leyland car. But as I've mentioned before, with depreciation, it would be cheaper to run an Opel that didn't depreciate than get 35% off a Rover that then dropped like a stone as well. So when they come to trade it back in, the money had gone. So the better paying full price, little discount for an Opel than getting a massive discount off a Rover at the time. It's worked like that since the beginning of time, since the Highlander was a kid. It's still the same today. If you buy something that depreciates rapidly, it will cost you more than something that doesn't. I keep going on about this because people just don't seem to get it. People seem to think depreciation is a good thing. Even the editor of Parker's thinks depreciation is a good thing. So if he thinks it's good, what chance have you got? What chance have you got if the editor of Parker's thinks depreciation's a good thing? And just about Lotus there. It is becoming painfully clear that it is also the final nail in the coffin of the once mighty British car industry, and it is starting to look as if it's too late to save it now. Rewind a couple of decades and Lotus would have been little more than a footnote in any assessment of the British car industry. Its sports cars might have been stylish and appealed to a handful of playboys and petrolheads, but you were never likely to see one parked on a suburban driveway. It is a measure of how dramatically the industry has shrunk that it is a significant player. And yet sadly it may not be for much longer. This week Lotus announced that as many as 550 jobs will be lost owing to current market conditions. Geely, its Chinese owner, which has owned a controlling stake in the company since 2017, has been pumping cash into a factory in Norfolk where its Amira sports car and Evija electric hypercar are made. But in the face of tariffs and quotas in the crucial US market, Geely appears to be rapidly losing faith. Sure, the company will insist that it's simply scaling back in response to a challenging few months, but the harsh truth is this: those 500 people will perfectly, understandably, go off to find other jobs, and those skills will be lost forever. Blade Runner, Rutger Hauer. The only reasonable conclusion is that Geely is giving up. It is far from alone. Jaguar Land Rover has already said it will cut 500 jobs, and production of Jaguars remains suspended while it gets ready for the launch of its new electric model. Meanwhile, Vauxhall has closed its van plant in Luton, and only last month the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders reported that total British vehicle production had fallen to levels last seen way back in 1953, excluding the COVID shutdown, with a fall in production of 70% over the first 6 months of this year. 70%. 7 decades of an expanding population and economic growth have been wiped out in a few short years. Extraordinarily, the government still has a target of producing 1.3 million vehicles a year by 2030, but that seems laughably, well, like anything the Labour government do or say, laughably unrealistic right now. Instead, Britain is well on the way to leaving the club of auto manufacturing nations. It is not hard to work out all the things that have gone wrong with the industry. The post-Brexit supply chains were too complex. The government also never managed to work out a way of reducing the paperwork to allow manufacturers to operate just-in-time systems that could survive our departure from the European Union. The domestic market is significant, but it does not provide the scale required for mass production to compete with the German, Japanese and now Chinese rivals, and definitely not all three at the same time. We've narrowed down our manufacturing capabilities to niches such as sports cars and luxury SUVs, but while that can be a strength when times are good, a specialism helps you survive against far bigger rivals. It also leaves you very vulnerable to changes in fashion. We left EU tariffs on American cars in place for far too long after we departed the bloc, ignoring the obvious risk that one day a US president might come along and decide to retaliate with tariffs of his own. Above all, however, we have made a complete mess of the switch from petrol to electric vehicles. The green commissars that dominate policymaking have been determined to phase out petrol vehicles, but never bothered to come up with a realistic plan for getting there. Subsidies for EVs were increased and then scrapped when they turned out to be costing the Treasury too much money, and then restarted once scrapping them turned out to be bad for sales. It's bad for sales. Subsidies are bad for sales. Subsidies are bad for residual values. Subsidies are wooden dollars that come off the front of the vehicle, but also the vehicle's worth less. And they come off the price of this vehicle and they affect all the other vehicles that have been registered and pre-registered and just decimate residuals. It's a stupid, lame-brained idea, but what can you expect? What can you expect from the people in charge of the motor trade who don't know what's going on? What can you expect from a government that their MPs look like they struggle to string a sentence together? What can you expect from a transport minister who basically seems to me to have no idea about transport? It's not difficult to understand why things are going pear-shaped, is it? It is hardly surprising that drivers were left bewildered and have carried on patching up their old petrol cars instead of buying a new electric one. Well, apparently now there's more 10-year-old cars than ever before on the road. Likewise, the charging infrastructure was hopelessly inadequate. The electricity was too expensive, suburban homes and apartments don't have any space to plug the car in, and we hardly even have the grid capacity to charge all the EVs up at peak times. The result, the manufacturers have been forced into making battery-powered cars before the market is ready for them. It is hard to believe it, but even with all the challenges that have emerged, the sale of new petrol cars is still set to be banned in less than 5 years from now. Hybrids seem to make sense to me. If you don't want a full electric and you don't want to get rid of your petrol, then get a hybrid. It is a case study in one industrial blunder from another, pushed by a class of Westminster officials who have no idea how industrial manufacturing works. Not just me that thinks it. The blunt truth is this: Lotus is a high quality brand with a fantastic heritage and lots of prestige. Geely is a smart, well-run company that has managed to emerge as one of the winners in China's brutally competitive domestic auto industry. It ranks second only to BYD in the Chinese market. It should have been winning. But if even Lotus Geely can't make manufacturing cars in the UK commercially viable, it is hard to see how anyone can. And we have only ourselves to blame for the catastrophe that has befallen what used to be one of the UK's biggest industries. Well, it's not hard for me to see why Lotus have failed. In fact, it's very easy. In fact, when they first announced it, I said Colin Chapman would be turning in his grave. It's not hard for me to see why Lotus has failed. It's very, very easy. And let me just go to 298 Lotus. Look at those. Let's go to oldest. That's showing you relevance. I don't want relevance. I want age oldest. And even on Auto Trader's search, where I put in I want the oldest, the first car it pushes up is a Lotus Emira. Thank you, Auto Trader. Thanks for shiting my search up every single time without fail. Thanks for bastardizing my search. If I hadn't got, I mean, obviously I know that that's a recent car, but if I hadn't got Auto Trader Price Tracker, I wouldn't know. So there, you've got all those Lotus. I mean, look at that. Look at that Lotus Esprit. That is just flipping beautiful, isn't it? Don't you think? Don't you think that car is beautiful? That is just I still want that now. I remember watching film, whatever it was, with Barrie Norman when The Spy Who Loved Me and Roger Moore drove out of the sea. With Barbara back in the passenger seat, chucked a fish out the window. What a beautiful car. What a beautiful car. And those little, when I was younger, I was 18, and there was a Lotus Elan, beautiful little car, fantastic car. And it was 900 quid. And I got an insurance quote. I could afford the 900 quid at the time for the car, probably on finance, but it was 900 quid for insurance as well, so I'm afraid that was that. There's a Lotus Elan there, the later one, which was still a nice looking car. To be fair, view gallery, you know, not a bad looking car really. That little Lotus Elise, pocket rocket, great investment. Lotus 340R, great investment, can't see right off. You know, let's look at them, beautiful things. And then we start getting on to, see that's an advert, even though I've done all this first. Yeah, Auto Trader think, Auto Trader think I might want a lease deal on a Lotus Electra with a £12,600 initial payment and then 48-month contract, 5,000 miles per annum at £1,051 a month. So that's 48,000. That's going to cost you 60,000 in it, 60,000 plus for 48 months to do 20,000 miles. Fucking idiots. Yeah, we're getting on to. Let's just do this now. We'll filter, fuel type, electric. All the years they've been producing petrol vehicles, there's 212 petrol vehicles, only 212. There's 86 electrics. Search the electrics. Then we're going to get, again, that's oldest. We don't want oldest now, because what tells the real story is the most recent search. And again, it only tells the most recent search the truth if you have Auto Trader Price Tracker. Because those at the bottom, you see, if you've got Auto Trader Price Tracker, you wouldn't know really the difference. But those are ads. You may also like add. That's not what I asked for. Then you get onto the truth here. Look at that. That was listed the 14th of December 2023. It's still not sold, and they've reduced it by £48,049. 4th of 4th 2024, down 29,500. 26th of the 6th 2024, down 32,700, down 45,000, down £53,001, down £62,602, down 44,796, down 56, down 24, down 22, down 22, down 16, down 15, down 26, down 15. The reason why Lotus has suffered its latest setback is because experts, EV perts, thought people who wanted to buy a Lotus would want an electric vehicle, and they don't. If you buy a Lotus, you want the sound of that car drumming in your ears. You want the thrill. You want the noise. You want the sound of the engine. You want the vibration from the engine. You want the gear change. You don't want zzz. 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 No, thank you. People have voted with their feet. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.